Denton Day, my old producer and now a talk show host and a reporter, is going to join us in 15 minutes. He was at the joint practice with the Dolphins, and he'll jump on with his recap. I heard it went very well at 10:15. ESPN's Mark Schlabach right now has the number one trending story on ESPN.com. It has to do with Jaden Daniels and a cease and desist letter sent on his behalf by his attorney to LSU, along with some statements made by somebody representing Jaden Daniels to ESPN about it. Mark's going to give us all of the details. You got to wait 30 minutes for 10:35 for Mark Schlabach. And yes, I have read through everything. I'm looking forward to talking to Mark. I've got some questions for Mark about this, but I'll tell you what I think at 11 a.m. about this story. Andy Pollin, his 50-year radio career, not quite, about 48-and-a-half-year radio career, doing sports radio, not just here. You guys may not know this about Andy, but he actually was a part of the early infancy days of WFAN in New York, which was the first and biggest and still is 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week sports talk radio station. Andy joined me yesterday to talk about some of his memories, some of the stories from a career that might be over, although those of us that know Andy won't be surprised if that's not the case. But I'll play our conversation back for you during the 12 o'clock hour. Yes, I'm going to get to the Jaden Daniels LSU stuff. We're going to have Mark on first, and then at 11 a.m., I'll dig into it. But we ended the show with this yesterday, and then maybe I got a little bit emotional. Not a lot emotional, but Rich thinks I got pretty emotional talking about something late yesterday. Rich writes, I got to give it to you, Kevin. You are a top 5 homer in the DMV Sports Reporter Homer Power Rankings. I thought you might pass out when you read that the Commanders were ranked 29th yesterday. Hope you're feeling better. Hate to do this and to do you, but netting it out, and he puts that in half quotes, Washington is the 4th best team in their own division. And then he concludes his email to me with, how about them Cowboys? Thank you for that, Rich. Who the hell's ranked ahead of me? I'm dying to know. In the DMV Sports Reporter Homer Power Rankings. First of all, clarification, I'm not a reporter. Ben Standing is a reporter. Nikki Jabvala, John Kine, they are reporters. I'm the opposite of a reporter. I'm just a babbler about our team. But yes, if you missed it yesterday, I should probably lay it out for you guys. NFL.com put out its preseason power rankings and indeed ranked Washington out of 32 teams 29th. 29th. And I said this yesterday. I honestly, I swear on my kids, I don't really care about preseason power rankings. They're really irrelevant. In-season power rankings can be completely irrelevant. Last year, and I think I did this a few weeks ago, right, or 2 weeks ago, right as training camp was getting underway, I said, remember, what you see, what you hear this time of year doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. The NFL is so ever-changing, so dynamic. And last year's top 5, like a consensus power rankings, 3 of those 5 teams didn't make the postseason. Baltimore, Kansas City, and Detroit. And then Seattle was consistently ranked in the low 20s before the season began last year. They won the Super Bowl. And New England was in the high 20s, somewhere around 28th on average in the preseason power rankings. And they were the other team in the Super Bowl. But something did feel like off, like absurd about Washington being 29th out of 32 teams. You really do get caught up into recency bias. I mean, it really is a backbone or the backbone of a lot of sports conversation. You know, what you saw yesterday or last night is what it is. In the case of the NFL, because they haven't played a game since last winter, what you last saw is kind of what that team is. And Washington was a 5-12 football team. They weren't the 29th worst team in the league, but they were certainly not very good. But I guess for me, the reason it is so absurd, the precise reason it's so absurd for anybody, you know, especially at one of these major NFL sites or sports sites. NFL.com is, you know, the NFL Network site, the league's site. A lot of good reporters, a lot of good content. Don't get me wrong, but a team with a debatable top 10 quarterback can't be 29th. Can't be behind the Browns, who are deciding between Shadur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. Can't be behind the Cardinals, who are deciding between Jacoby Brissett and rookie Carson Beck. Like, that just seems like, wait a minute. Maybe the editor, before they posted it, should have said, is this actually correct? I mean, who came up with that? Yeah, the Cardinals, who have a 3.5 win total for the season in some spots, the lowest in 9 years heading into an NFL season. 3.5 is their over-under win total for 2026. Washington's, by the way, is 7.5. The Cardinals are 3 spots better at 26th than Washington at 29th? I mean, come on, Cleveland, please. If you're wondering, the teams, you know, and it's only 3 of them, ranked below Washington are the Jets at 30, the Raiders at 31, and the team they joint practiced with yesterday, the Dolphins, at 32. In addition to the Browns and the Cardinals being ahead of them, the Giants are ahead of them at 27, the Falcons are ahead of them at 25, and the Titans are ahead of them at 24. You know, I'm going to see some preseason power rankings, and I've already seen some, where they're in the high teens, low 20s. That seems totally fair, you know, based on a lot of question marks. And certainly there's an even bigger question mark with Laramie Tunsil being out. I know many of you, and I am too, to a certain degree, are confident that Brandon Coleman can step in and be a professional left tackle, but he probably won't be Laramie Tunsil. Yeah, I mean, to me, for this kind of exercise where a lot of the thinking is as much about what you last saw as what you think you're going to see, I'd understand 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 29 with the Browns and the Cardinals in front of them, the Titans in front of them. Come on. That's just... yeah. But thank you, Rich. There might be a little homer there. I'm okay with that. But I also think there is some objectivity. Some objectivity. I mean, just seems weird. Now, the good news is the 29 ranking in the NFL.com preseason power rankings was offset by their 32nd ranking in Pro Football Focus's O-line rankings. That was, hey, it doesn't seem like they've got the 32nd best offensive line even with Laramie Tunsil out. But PFF's numbers, I guess, say that they do. That was sarcasm for those of you who did not pick up on it. Hit the what do you got sounder. You know, Maryland football is down the list. I understand that in the market. I do. But I'm a big Maryland football fan. I'm a Maryland alum. I'm a huge Terps hoops fan. I'm a huge Terps football fan. And this is a big year for their football program coming up. Big year for Mike Locksley. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They had a pretty good defensive football team last year with a very promising true freshman quarterback. Malik Washington. And he's back. I'm sure they had to come up with some really good money to keep him because he was certainly sought after in the transfer portal. But Maryland, just in football, they haven't seemed to have gotten any breaks recently. And yesterday, an absolute devastating blow. No, not to Malik Washington, the quarterback, thankfully, but to their star, and I mean legit star, defensive end and pass rusher, Zahir Mathis. Season ending knee injury. They had a good defense coming back, a defense that could compete as a top half of the Big Ten defense, maybe even better. Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis last year had really good seasons, and they came back despite being pursued big time in the portal. And that is just a crushing blow to the defense. Now they're deep at that position. Maryland had a 5-star, one of the top players in the country, Zion Aile, as a defensive end, commit to the Terps out of Baltimore. So they can perhaps have him step in. But the loss of Mathis is a big one for the Terps. So bad news there. I'll tell you, the key for them, they're going to open up with Hampton. They've got UConn. They've got a week 3 game at home against Virginia Tech. If they're going to go have themselves a season, they're going to have to be 3-0 after the Virginia Tech game. Going to have to be 3-0. They're going to have to beat James Franklin and Virginia Tech on Saturday afternoon. I think it's actually a Saturday night game, September 19th. That's going to be a gimme. If they lose that game, the season might go to hell in a handbucket. Have to be 3-0 heading into Big Ten play at that point. Tough break, though, for them, for sure. All right, Denton is going to have a complete recap of yesterday's joint practice with the Dolphins next. Denton Day, the former producer of this show and a good friend of mine who does so much good work in so many places. He is a co-host on an overnight show on Westwood One Sports Radio with our guy Linnell. He is the host of the Commanders pre- and post-game shows on this station and 106.7 The Fan, and he's a big college football guy on Sirius XM. But he has been out at every practice so far during training camp and was there yesterday for the Dolphins joint practice with Washington. So let's just start with your overall headlines from the joint practice. I know you were making your way around both fields as the defense worked against Miami's offense on one field, the offense worked against Miami's defense on another. But give me your big headlines from the day.
Tongue-in-cheek is that, boy, Miami sucks. The actual headline is that, boy, Jaden Daniels is really, really good. You know, he's really starting to understand what they're trying to do on offense, and I think we're seeing once he starts to get the hang of things, I think we kind of saw this in his rookie season, but once he starts to get the hang of things, he really takes leaps and bounds quickly in terms of his understanding, and I thought that was on display probably the most yesterday, which would be the biggest headline.
All right, so what specifically about Jaden Daniels stood out to you?
He really processes well. He's quick to go through his reads. He throws over the middle of the field. He understands where everyone is supposed to be. Everyone is in the right spot. We know from last year that's very important, and that was not always the case in 2025. But he started to build a really, really good chemistry and just kind of understanding that when you know where everyone's supposed to be, it makes it really easy to play with the defense with your eyes. And I think we started to see that a little bit yesterday, just kind of moving safeties, linebackers around a little bit just to give himself a little bit of space, to give him and his guys a little bit of a window, and then delivering the ball where it needed to be.
What did you notice about the 11-on-11 work? And what I'm getting at is the comfort with him being under center, the amount of him being under center. The lineup that was with him, you know, when they went ones versus ones, who was out there, who wasn't out there?
So that's one of the things that I really didn't love about yesterday is, and maybe to an extent in the long term, this is a good thing. They had every wide receiver out there with him for the most part. I mean, within reason, like with respect to River Crawcraft and Nick Nash, they weren't getting time with the ones, but they had formations with Diami, Treylon, and Luke. They had Stephon, Terry, and Luke. They had Stephon, Luke, and Trey. Like they kind of mixed and matched what they were doing on offense, which in one instance is like really nice to get everybody reps with Jaden, but I wanted to see Terry Diggs, and then whoever they wanted to put at 3, which I think is going to be Luke, at least for the next couple of days and weeks. I wanted to see a lot more of those, and we just didn't. Terry didn't do a whole lot yesterday. He made a couple of big catches, but it felt like he was the guy that was off of the field a little bit. I don't know. They haven't said he's dealing with something, but I kind of got the feeling that he's dealing with some soreness or something along those lines. So I would have liked to see him on the field with Jaden a little bit more. In terms of the comfortability, he looks really, really good on the move. And I think we kind of started to ask that last year, be like, hey, can we move the pocket a little bit for Jaden Daniels? He throws with really, really good accuracy, really, really good touch on the move. And I think that's probably been the biggest takeaway from the under center stuff, is that even if he does turn his back to the defense slightly, it's not like this be-all, end-all, the play's dead. He can still understand what the defense is trying to do. Nothing surprises him when he turns his head back around. So I think that's the thing I've been most impressed with the under-center stuff. It's not going to be like 90% of the time. We know that. You know, they might be doing under-center stuff for like 35% of snaps this year, but it's going to be a lot more than what they did last year.
Yeah, for those that don't know, like even the teams that led the league in under center snaps, I think the Rams, I forget who the team was. There was, I think, one or two teams that took more than 50% of its snaps from under center. And then everybody else was under 50%. Even the teams that did it the most were under 50% of their offensive snaps. So if you're expecting, oh my God, they're going under center, that means he's not going to be in shotgun, he's not going to be in pistol. No, the odds are at the end of the year, there will still be more non-under center snaps than under snaps. It's just that the under snap percentage is going to increase, probably exponentially, I would think, from last year. Did you notice anything? Were there any takeaways from the Brandon Coleman replacement of Laramie Tunsil? And then we know that Nick Allegretti wasn't there yesterday, won't be a part of the preseason game either. But what did the O-line look to you like? By the way, I would say that Miami defensive line personnel-wise, they've actually got some players. I've been a Chop Robinson guy. You liked him too, right, coming out of Penn State. So maybe, defensively they've got more talent than on offense. But just tell me what your takeaways on the O-line were.
Yeah, Chop Robinson is one of their very few redeeming qualities in Miami.
He's good. Yeah.
He's good, and no one else. I mean, Jordan Brooks is good. Jacob Rodriguez, I think, will be good.
I was going to ask you because I think you loved Rodriguez at Texas Tech too, right?
Yeah, I really liked him. He wasn't like super popping yesterday, but I think eventually he'll be pretty good. The offensive line really struggled in the run game. Like Brandon Coleman himself, I think was fine at left tackle. Connolly didn't have the greatest day, but I do wonder long term if they're going to have to make a move to Coleman going back to guard, because if they're going to be a run-heavy team, you're going to need better guard play. And Chris Paul's a good player. He did a really good job last year, but there were a couple of times where they're running counters and Chris Paul's pulling and he's just not getting there in time, right? And Brandon Coleman has a level of athleticism that Chris Paul does not have. The problem is then you don't have a left tackle. So losing Laramie Tunsil really throws this thing into chaos, and maybe there's another body in the open market at the moment that you feel like you'd be comfortable with if you go out and get an ad. I don't really want to see Wiley playing left tackle, but I think Brandon Coleman is going to be better suited for what they're trying to do in the run game, playing at guard, and I think their run game would be significantly better if they have Cosmi and Coleman as the two guards, and then you kind of allow Nick Allegretti, when he eventually comes back, which will be soon. This isn't like a Trey Amos thing. I think Nick Allegretti is going to be back after their first practice after the preseason game, but you feel much more comfortable, at least I do, with a Cosmi, Allegretti, Coleman interior offensive line than what we're seeing right now with Cosmi, Julian Good-Jones, and Chris Paul.
So when we talked before the show, that was the thing about the offensive line that you wanted to say about just Chris Paul's lack of athleticism at that guard spot?
There was 2 plays where they ran where he was pulling and just whiffed. Like the play was blown up really almost before, I think it was Bill as the running back, before Bill even touched the ball. There's a guy in the backfield because he just didn't get there in time.
All right. I do think that, I had somebody tell me late yesterday, that these joint practices are slowly turning into preseason games, meaning they used to really put stuff in for the joint practices. Obviously, they leave it out for the preseason games, but they're not even doing it in the joint practices anymore.
I was expecting a little bit more competitiveness in certain areas. And again, maybe that is because, like, you would have been stunned how bad the Dolphins were. I mean, there were times where they didn't look like they were a real competitive football team, especially when it was the Commanders' defense against their offense. I mean, God love Malik Willis. The man was running for his life. He's not exceptionally accurate.
Well, I want to get to the defense. It's a reminder to everybody that Malik Willis this time last year, no one even knew where he was or if he was even in the league anymore. And then all of a sudden he was the number 1 quarterback available in free agency. That tells you what everybody knows about the NFL before a season begins. But I can't imagine it's going to be great right away with Malik Willis. In the NFL.com power rankings, did you see this yesterday, Denton, with Washington at 29th? Did you see that ranking?
I did see that. I'd laugh at that.
Who cares really, except for I was a bit stunned. Like, come on. I mean, you can't have one of the debatable top 10 quarterbacks in the game and be 29th behind the Browns and the Cardinals. You just can't be. But the Dolphins were the 32nd ranked team. All right, tell me about the defense.
The defense looked great. It got to the point. So the first 11-on-11 period, I was watching the offense. The second one, I tried to watch a little bit of both, but the third 11-on-11 period, I was solely on the defensive side of the field, or the other field where the defense was playing, and I just wanted to see what they looked like. And they were just beating the offensive line like a drum. It did, like, pick a name out of a hat, and they were making a really, really good play. Charles Omenihu with the twos was destructive. Javon Kinlaw looked really good. Deron Payne was turning the clock back. I mean, they just couldn't block anybody. The two biggest takeaways, or the two biggest stars, are on the edge. Odafe Oweh and Caleb Cheson have been really good throughout the entirety of camp. I was curious to see what they were going to look like against somebody else. They looked the part. I mean, Odafe Oweh is going to be a tough dude to block this upcoming season. He's done a really, really good job. And they just love what he is. So I was really, really impressed with the defense. I couldn't really get a great gauge with the linebackers. Like, that's one of the things that kind of ended up sucking, is the offense for Miami was so bad that it became really hard to evaluate everybody else. Because Malik Willis had like a second, maybe a second and a half before there was 8 bodies in his face, including his own offensive line getting pushed back into his face. So he's running, he's doing a lot of cardio. He made a couple of nice throws. Obviously, Mikey Sanders still had an interception that was a pretty big deal. That got the crowd pretty fired up. But I was impressed with what I saw with the defense. I'm just taking it with like a bottle of salt because Miami's awful.
Yeah, no, I think even if it were a decent team, you still aren't sure in that environment on August 12th. You know, one of the things I think there are two things that have to happen defensively. We all understand the new personnel, the new coordinator, et cetera. But they have to turn what we believe are much improved pass rushers loose, like Oweh, like Chason. By the way, Dorrance Armstrong. I mean, Durante Jones went out of his way to single out John Baptiste the other day, who I know they liked before he got hurt last year. He was another one of those defensive linemen that got hurt along with Wise and Armstrong. But they've got to stop the run. You know, you're not going to be a great pass rushing team if you don't stop the run, because 3rd and 2 isn't a great pass rushing. 3rd and 3 is not a great pass rushing down. Is there anything about anything you've watched, including yesterday, that indicates to you that they've got a chance to be a much better run-stopping team than they've been in the last 2 years, really?
Yeah, there's two guys that indicate they're going to be better. 52, Sonny Styles, who they drafted in the first round. And then I think what has sneaky been one of the best acquisitions on defense is the return of Tim Settle. I think he does a really, really good job. And they're going to run a lot of sets where he's on the field, and he's not like this great pass rusher, but he really knows how to occupy space at the line of scrimmage. And I think that is going to be really, really beneficial to him, because I think Caleb Cheson and Odafe Oweh will be good at setting edges, which, if you remember in 2024, which you do, but if the fans remember 2024, boy, they couldn't set an edge. I mean, they were running Deron Payne at defensive end in the playoff, in one of the playoff games, because they just could not set an edge. I don't really think that's going to be a problem anymore. I think they have enough speed on defense too, and enough processing skills for a guy like Sonny Styles to read where the hole is going to be and then get there and beat the running back to the spot.
Yeah, I think the one of the important things there is Styles being a taller, a linebacker. You got to do a great job up front so that they can't get to him on the double teams. Payne, Settle, Kinlaw, Newton, etc. Those edge setters, they're going to have to do a much better job. The other thing I was going to mention is, look, they were 31st in the league last year, 26th the year before in takeaways. They have not been able to take the ball away. Obviously, that is a massive, massive determinant of football games. And do you sense, in watching over the first, week and a half, that this is something that they're going to be better at? Somebody mentioned to me that Amik Robertson is outstanding with his sort of, risk-taking, anticipation, ball skills.
He's been the best corner by, I would say, a pretty comfortable margin. I mean, so when Rasul Douglas got here, he made a couple of plays in the first couple of days, and that really stood out. But from the long-term view of things, Amik Robinson's been the best corner that they have there. Mikey made the pick six yesterday, and he made a good play. He understood what they were doing with the zone, knew he had help over the top, so he could be a little bit more risky on the play where he took it to the house. But Robinson's been the best corner. I haven't loved what they've done at the position, and part of that's because Trey Amos just isn't healthy, right? He comes back and practices for like a day and a half, and then he tweaks something else. That's alarming. You know, that's not something that I'm thrilled with. With the Allegretti stuff I mentioned earlier, you understand the timeline of recovery, and at the very least, if nothing else, he's following the timeline of recovery. For Amos to kind of have this thing pop up that we didn't know about, that kept him out for the first few days, and he gets back and immediately has something else pop up, not thrilled about that one. Because I like Amik, but I don't know that he can be like your number one corner when you start to see the big boys come to town, and they're coming to town in 20 days, right? With Philly, with and then with Dallas. I mean, with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, that might be the best 1-2 combo. I don't know. I'm a little worried about what they're doing at cornerback when those two guys are on the opposite end of you.
By the way, Ben pointed this out to me yesterday. They just can't keep Jeremy Reeves off the field, can they, at safety? Like, he's going to be a player that's on the field a lot and taking a lot of free safety snaps, don't you think?
He is. So they've run a couple of interesting packages to where sometimes they have three safeties on the field. It'll be Cross.
So Will Harris
Reeves,
is the third with Cross?
And then Will Harris.
Yeah.
They did a couple of snaps yesterday where Quan would come in, but, I mean, I wouldn't expect to see – your options at free safety are effectively Jeremy Reeves, Percy Butler, or Quan Martin. And while Reeves isn't like this he's never going to be an all-pro. I just don't think that's what he is at this stage of his career. I would say he's probably the best option of those three. I really want to love Quan, but it just hasn't. He had a good year in 2024, but last year was brutal. And it's felt like in training camp so far that last year was much more of the player that he is in the NFL, not what he was in 2024.
Real quickly, back to Amik Robertson, and we're talking to Denton. He was at the joint practice yesterday out in Ashburn. Is Amik Robertson playing exclusively inside or not?
No, they're moving him. So, again, with no Amos,
right,
you're kind of like you're forcing a lot of guys to be in a different spot. But I would say that Robertson has actually played more outside the past few days than inside. There was a few plays yesterday where he was the outside corner and Mikey was the inside corner. And then they had either Rasul Douglas or they would rotate in Fabian Moreau, who they just signed like a week ago, and he would be on the other outside. So Amik Robinson has been playing some outside stuff too.
All right, kickers had a great day. Right now, who's the betting favorite to be the kicker in Philadelphia on September 13th?
I would say it's the young kid, Stevens, wearing number 19. It feels like he has the leg up, pun intended, on the competition. He could have, honestly, I think he could have won it the other day where Moody missed 4 in a row in the kicking period, and then Stevens came out and missed 3 in a row in the kicking period. But I think they like Stevens a little bit more than they like Moody right now. But we'll see. I mean, once they start kicking an actual game action, I think that's going to be a big time separator in the competition, because you can do it in practice when you're not really getting rushed at and there's not thousands of people screaming at you. We'll see what it looks like in a game, even if it is just a preseason game.
All right, I know you very well. So give me the player that you've watched here for 10, 11 days, whatever it's been at this point, that you've been paying attention to and that you've kind of fallen in love with, that maybe, nobody anticipated this player being a big part of the thing come the regular season. Who's that player?
I love Colson Yankoff. I think that tight end room is really, really deep, but the way that they use his athleticism, I think he has an opportunity to be a really, really big player. And with the absence of John Bates for the past couple of days and weeks in training camp, he's getting a lot more action. He's getting a lot more reps with the ones. Not a ton, but a lot more. I think the athleticism that he has could be a very, very sneaky weapon for the offense when they're running some 3 tight end sets with Jaden under center. So I'm really excited about what Yankoff could be on offense.
All right. Thanks for doing this. I'll talk to you later. Appreciate it.
Yep. See ya.
at the Denton Day on X. Up next, Mark Schlabach wrote this story that is #1 trending on ESPN.com right now, that Jaden Daniels informed LSU, an attorney representing Jaden Daniels informed LSU that it can no longer use his name, image, and likeness, a cease and desist letter. But it goes beyond that. Mark will join us next. ESPN's Mark Schlabach joins us right now. Mark's got the #1 trending story right now on ESPN.com. Mark's covered so many sports, golf and college football, among those that he is most associated with. And this morning, or late last night, he put out a story about a cease and desist letter sent by the attorney representing Jaden Daniels to LSU and to LSU's athletic director for them to stop using his name, image, and likeness. But it goes beyond that because Mark was able to get statements from the Daniels camp on what this might really be about. With that, thank you, Mark, for doing this. As always, I love talking to you. We'll do a college football preview in a couple of weeks. That's more fun. But tell us what this is all about and what you learned from the spokesperson.
Yeah, we got this tip yesterday afternoon and reached out to Daniel's camp and said, hey, we're hearing that there's a problem at LSU with his jersey number 5. That DJ Pickett, sophomore corner, was #2 cornerback in the country last year as a recruit out of Florida and played as a true freshman, was a freshman All-American. He wore #3 last year. He wore #5 to practice last week, and some reporters asked Lane Kiffin about it. And the Daniels camp, we were told the Daniels camp was really upset about it, that there might have been a cease and desist letter sent. And, late last night, got my hands on the cease and desist letter, talked to some folks at LSU, talked to some people in Daniels camp. And, yeah, it's a pretty big snafu. His number has not, Jaden Daniels, number 5, has not been retired by LSU. LSU got out of the business of retiring numbers in 2007. There's only one jersey an LSU football player can't wear, and that's Billy Cannon's number 20, which was retired decades ago.
Right.
But, for whatever reason, Jaden Daniels and his camp were under the impression that no one would ever wear his jersey again, and no one has worn Joe Burrow's number 9 since he left in 2019. And for whatever reason, I think they feel like they're not being treated the same as Joe Burrow.
Well, I mean, for it to be apples to apples with Joe Burrow, a number 2 recruit in the country would have had to request number 9 to get recruited and to sign with LSU. There was a player that requested number 5, and that may have been a big part of why he signed with LSU. From what we know, or from what you know, is there anybody that said, I want to wear number 9 or I'm not coming to LSU?
In conversations with former LSU coach Brian Kelly yesterday, he said that the Burrow camp wasn't ready to allow anyone to wear number 9, so they didn't give out number 9. And he said that a promise was made to DJ Pickett during the recruitment that he could wear number 5 at LSU. And he said he didn't give it to him last year because Jaden Daniels wasn't ready to let anyone wear it. And then obviously Brian Kelly gets fired middle of season last year, and Lane Kiffin takes over in January. Kiffin told reporters last week that, hey, it really wasn't my decision. The kid was promised he could wear 5. It's part of the reason he signed here. And so I let him wear it. But, I don't know what's in Pickett's contract with LSU. I mean, this is the state of college football and college athletics.
Right.
Someone told me that there's a clause in his contract that he can wear it. I haven't seen his contract. They told me there was monetary damages that LSU would have to pay if he didn't get to wear the jersey. I find that hard to believe. At the same time, it's such a crap show now that I believe anything. But it seems like they could just write a check to DJ Pickett and make this all go away, and they still have a good relationship with their 3rd Heisman Trophy winner.
Yes, there are 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Billy Cannon, who has the only jersey officially retired in LSU football history. Joe Burrow, who led LSU to an undefeated season and the greatest offensive season passing-wise in NCAA history as they won the national championship. And then, of course, Jaden Daniels. And to be fair, if he had even a bad defense, Mark, instead of an absolutely horrific defense, they probably would have won the national championship because he was that good in college. All right, so I'm kind of viewing this, and maybe it's the wrong way to view it before I get to the opinion part of it, but there is a cease and desist letter, which you've read, I think everybody's read if you're following this story, that has and doesn't mention the jersey number at all. The jersey number as the backbone is the basis for them being profoundly disrespected, as they wrote, emotionally distraught over this, is about number 5 being given to this DJ Pickett. But as it relates to the cease and desist letter on ongoing NIL, is there an actual argument for players when they leave the school, they're in the NFL, that the school can't benefit from their name, image, and likeness, even though they won a Heisman Trophy wearing that school's uniform?
Yeah, again, I have not seen what Jaden Daniels' contract with LSU looked like. According to his attorney in this cease and desist letter, LSU was permitted to use his name, image, and likeness for 180 days after his final game. Obviously, that we're beyond that stretch. Legally, I don't know without seeing the contract. If you remember maybe a year ago, Kevin, the 1983 NC State Cardiac Pack team tried to sue NC State and the NCAA for continuously using images of Lorenzo Charles Dunk and Jim Valvano running around and hugging players saying they improperly used their NIL for the last 40 years or whatever. That case was thrown out of court. We've seen guys like Jamison Williams, the Detroit Lions receiver, and former Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott. They have ongoing federal lawsuits against their schools and conferences for not properly paying them when they paid for their NIL. So this one, I don't know. I mean, they're basically telling Daniels Camp is basically telling LSU, take my photos down in your football building. Don't use my image on your scoreboard during games. You know, I don't cover up my Heisman Trophy. I don't know if they went that far, but it's a mess for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things I can't believe that in the NIL contract. What did Jaden get paid? I'm just curious to leave Arizona State and play at LSU. Do you know?
I don't. I would assume, at least $1 million would probably be the market.
Right. So it was the market back then. Imagine him today.
Yeah.
But I just can't imagine that, the school that's been around for more than 100 years and has had one of the most dominant football programs in America is going to cede, a great player's history with that particular school back to the player after they've paid him. That one doesn't make sense to me. How can you not use, if you're LSU, one of your 3 Heisman Trophy winners, you'd love him to be an ambassador for your school in recruiting. I mean, videos, film, everything about the school that gets presented to just normal students probably includes a Jaden Daniels highlight.
Yeah, no, it's probably not the best contract that was written if it was only 180 days. But look, these players, even high school recruits, have attorneys. They have agents. I'm sure they're protecting their long-term NIL rights. It's very one-sided to players right now. Schools are desperate to get top talent and compete for hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it's the state of the game, and it's insane.
All right, so it sounds like the cease and desist part, who knows? Maybe they actually have a case based on the contract that they had with the school. The other situation is what you learned and what you wrote about, which is really the basis for all of this is he's upset that they gave number 5 out and Joe Burrow's number 9 has continued to be protected. Does he have any sort of legal right to protect his number 5 jersey and have it not be reassigned after he's no longer with the school?
I'd find it hard to. I mean, there were hundreds of players who wore number 5 before he got there. I don't know. I mean, that's a great legal question. I'm sure if they can't come to some sort of a resolution, it's going to end up in court. But I don't know. I mean, the number 5 jersey at LSU belongs to LSU.
Of course it does. Can you imagine the precedent that would be set if somehow he was able, as a professional player, long removed from LSU, if he were the essential decision maker on how number 5 got used, every player that ever played there, not every player, but a bunch of players would start to come out and try to protect their number. By the way, and you can appreciate this because you lived in the area for a while, but one of the big stories, I mean, not an on-the-field story, but a story that's generated some passion here over the last few days, Mark, has been that Stefon Diggs wants permission from Joe Theismann to wear number 7. And, I think the reaction is sort of split along generational lines. Like, for me, Joe's jersey is a protected jersey. It may be a jersey, no guarantee, but it could be a jersey that could be retired. And, he should find another number. But here we are with this. It doesn't seem logical to me that a player could stop a university from using and reissuing his jersey number if it's not they've got to make the decision. It's their preservation of history responsibility, not his.
Well, it's I can remember 2003, I did a recruiting story about a kid named Ernie Sims who ended up playing the NFL for a while, linebacker out of Tallahassee, Florida. His last three schools were Auburn, Florida State, and Georgia. He wanted to wear number 34, Bo Jackson's number, Herschel Walker's number,
Right.
and Ron Seller's number, Florida State. All three retired. Florida State buckled. Georgia and Auburn held their ground. I just can't believe that a jersey number, means that much to some of these guys. I remember Syracuse talked about unretiring the number 44 jersey that Jim Brown and Ernie
Leroy
Davis
Kelly.
it's insanity. But it's we're going to get to the point here in the next 10 to 20 years where these guys aren't wearing numbers, they're wearing QR codes that, then they can own those.
Yeah. So, net this out for us. Where does it go next?
I would hope for both sides that they come to some sort of a resolution. There are some guys who will never give blessing for somebody to wear their jersey. Matt Leinart, said a couple of years ago, that they asked him several times to let somebody wear number 11. He said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give it to some random guy. He said he'll wear number 11, and then in today's game, he'll transfer after a year. So I don't know. It really seems like the Jaden Daniels camp is really dug its heels in, and they're not going to back down from it. And that's a shame because it's going to ruin a relationship with his alma mater, and he's never going to come back to Tiger Stadium and be honored at halftime and those things if this doesn't work out.
If Brian Kelly were still there, would we be talking about this at all?
This is one of the rare occasions, Kevin. I'm not going to put this on Lane Kiffin.
Okay.
He inherited the mess. I do think that Pickett probably was talking about going elsewhere if he couldn't wear it, and so he had to buckle. But again, I don't know if it's in his contract, and legally they have to do it. His representation could be saying, "Hey, if you don't give him number 5, you're in breach of our deal," and he's leaving. Which is it's
insane.
It's nuts, but it's great because it's the pettiness of college sports, and it's what makes it great and what makes it interesting. But it's just when I heard this yesterday, I was like, "You have got to be kidding me!"
All right, I want to finish with this to really get your hunch. You may have a hunch, you may not. You may know the answer to this, you may not. But all of these statements about the Daniels family is deeply disappointed, feels profoundly disrespected by LSU's decision to give Jaden's number to another player. All of that, in your story comes from a Daniels spokesperson to ESPN. Do you feel like this is Jaden or the team around him?
I haven't talked to Jaden, so I will leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you for this, as always. An interesting story. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
Maybe we can talk right before college football starts.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Mark Schleba, everybody from ESPN. I'll give you my thoughts on this when we come back. If you want to weigh in, we'll open up phone lines, 301-230-0980. I'll recap, summarize everything that's out there on this. It is interesting, for sure. It's not on the field, thankfully. And the good news of the last 24 hours is how good he looked on the field yesterday against the terrible Dolphins. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So this Jaden Daniels story, which is the number one trending story on ESPN.com, to me, there are two things in summarizing this story. Number one is the cease and desist letter itself, the letter from the attorney representing Jaden Daniels to LSU about ceasing and on the continuation of using Jaden's name, image, and likeness for the benefit of the university's athletic department, the university's football program. And then the second part are the quotes that Mark Schlabach got from a Daniels spokesperson, not Daniels himself. Mark was very clear that he did not talk to Jaden Daniels himself. But those are the two things I think to focus on. Maybe there are others as well, and I'll let you guys bring up some of that at 301-230-0980. The cease and desist letter, just so everybody understands, is out there to be read. I won't read the whole thing, but it is sent to LSU football. Attention, Verge Osbury, that's the LSU athletic director. And it's regarding a demand to immediately cease and desist use of likeness. And it reads, Mr. Osbury, our firm represents Mr. Jaden Daniels in connection with matters relating to the commercial and promotional use of his name, image, likeness, voice, signature, photograph, biographical information, personal attributes, and other indicia of identity and publicity rights. We've been informed that the Louisiana State University, including its athletics departments, coaches, affiliated personnel, vendors, licensees, and or other persons or entities acting at LSU's direction or for its benefit continues to use Mr. Daniels' NIL, notwithstanding the expiration of the contractual period during which LSU was authorized to do so. And then they go on to say that period was 180 days post-termination, post-expiration of the NIL deal that Daniel signed when he left Arizona State to go play for LSU in 2022 and 2023. There's a lot of legalese the rest of the way, but that's essentially the gist of it. And there is no mention of jersey number, of we're very upset about, and we don't want anybody to wear Jaden's number 5 jersey at LSU. For that, and that's the second part of this, you've got to go to the Mark Schlabach story. And we just had Mark on the show, and he went through the whole thing. But there were a lot of quotes he got from a Daniels spokesperson. But Mark's story essentially says that an attorney representing Jaden Daniels informed LSU through this cease and desist letter that it can no longer use his name, image, and likeness. And Mark says at the center of the dispute, according to a statement from a Daniels spokesperson to ESPN, is that the Tigers are allowing sophomore cornerback DJ Pickett to wear the number 5 jersey that Daniels wore when he became LSU's third Heisman Trophy winner in 2023. As Mark explained, apparently it was a recruiting promise to DJ Pickett, the number 2 corner in his class. He wanted number 5 as a condition to come to LSU, and they promised it to him via their NIL contract with him. Now, Brian Kelly apparently got him to wear a different number last year, but they've got a new coach in Lane Kiffin, and Lane Kiffin is allowing DJ Pickett to wear number 5 this year. And Mark's story essentially says that the real reason for this cease and desist letter is that they are allowing DJ Pickett to wear number 5, while Joe Burrow's number 9 has not been given to anybody else. What we don't know is if another recruit desired, asked for contractually in their NIL deal with LSU to have the ability to wear the number 9 jersey. We don't know if that's true or not, but Mark did indicate that Joe Burrow would like it to continue to be protected. And my sense of it is, real quickly, I'll just interject one thing before I get to the quotes, in Mark's story is that if DJ Pickett wasn't such a great player that LSU wanted, and part of his NIL demand was to wear number 5, that Jaden's number 5 would still be protected. That's my guess. I can't guarantee that. But more likely than not, it's come about because there was a player, a great player, that LSU wanted badly that wanted to wear number 5, or he was going to go somewhere else. Now, the quotes in Schlabach's story. To be honest with you, this is the part where, okay, we can have, I think, a strong opinion. It's hard to have a strong opinion overall in the cease and desist letter without knowing what the contract, what his NIL contract says. But here's the first quote from a Daniels spokesperson. Quote, "The Daniels family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected by LSU's decision to give Jaden's number to another player. Jaden and his family have had every reason to believe that his number would remain a meaningful part of his LSU legacy and would be honored and protected in recognition of his extraordinary contributions to the university. Jaden made it clear that he did not want his number given to another player, and he believed his wishes would be respected. His Heisman Trophy winning season and everything he accomplished on and off the field cemented his place in LSU history. To see his number given to another player is incredibly disappointing and feels like a failure to honor the significance of what Jaden accomplished at LSU," closed quote. So, again, two kind of things to focus on. The cease and desist letter, what he or his attorney representing Jaden Daniels is asking LSU to do, and then the quotes from the spokesperson, which really gives you a sense of why the cease and desist letter was sent. He's very upset. He is more than just upset. He is, or the family, because the quote is, "The Daniels family is deeply disappointed and profoundly," they feel profoundly disrespected. Now, as it relates to the cease and desist letter, even if it was sent because Jaden and his family are upset about the number, and it seems like that is the case, I can't tell you that they don't have a case. I don't have the NIL contract in front of me, and Mark Schlabach didn't have the NIL contract in front of him. He did not have access to that. To me, it seems really stupid that a school would give up its rights to use the experience a player had at their university playing a sport as a recruiting and as a promotional tool. But maybe they did give up those rights per that NIL deal. I have no idea. Maybe it's a legitimate claim, a legitimate legal right that Jaden has to protect his name, image, and likeness from his time at LSU. But doesn't it seem absurd that an NIL contract would give up those rights? Like with a 180-day period where they could use it, but after that they can't? I mean, I'm sure they have some sense of, man, if a player is that great, and has a great experience, he's going to want to continue to promote the university and be a part of it. But that doesn't always happen. And in today's day and age, you have to be aware that these players are going for everything they have. But it seems like just absurdly stupid for a university, which, by the way, gives the player this massive platform, and a sport that hands out a Heisman Trophy. Of course, Jaden Daniels, he was amazing. I said it with Mark, and I've said it to you guys a million times because not all of you watched LSU in 22 and 23. But they had one of the worst defenses the SEC has ever seen in 2023. Wasn't great in 2022 either. If the defense had been just bad instead of all-time bad, they probably would have won the national championship. He was that good in 23 in particular. He was pretty good in 22 also. But he was such an absolute show, and they were so unstoppable offensively with him at quarterback. If they could have gotten a few stops a game, they probably would have been in the playoff and may have won the national championship. Look, Joe Burrow's team defensively was better. Wasn't the best defense, but it was better. Joe Burrow had the single greatest season any college quarterback has ever had, touchdown-wise, yards-wise, and they didn't lose a game and they won the national championship. There is a difference with the overall team performance with Joe Burrow and with Jaden Daniels. I personally wouldn't say that Joe Burrows was a better college quarterback than Jaden Daniels was. I don't think LSU would have had a chance to be as good as they were without Jaden at quarterback. He was that good. But it really seems like so dumb. I mean, think about it. For those of you who have taken your kids on college visits, when they put on the first video in the first, big room that you go into, there's always a big thing about sports if you're at a sports school, and they use, video and highlights of their best players. They can't use that? They can't talk about Jaden Daniels and use him as an example of, if you come here, we've had 2 Heisman Trophy winners at quarter. It just doesn't seem intuitive to me, but I don't know what the contract says. So they might have an absolute legal claim, even if it's backed by this emotion over the jersey number. Now, as it relates to these quotes from the Jaden family spokesperson, or the spokesperson representing Jaden Daniels, the family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected. I just think that really feels, first blush, like an unforced error. They could have just had the cease and desist letter and not provided the backdrop for this, because the backdrop gives off, especially it coming from the family. And, of course, we all know that the mother is involved, not only as a mother, but as an agent as well. I mean, she was featured more in the Netflix quarterback show when it came to Jaden than even Jaden was. I'd love to know the minutes breakdown, because I think that she was probably on there as much as he was. I'm not criticizing it. Jaden's not the most dynamic personality, and he had a brutal season that was injury marred. And she actually does have a lot of personality. And he doesn't have a wife, or he doesn't have a girlfriend, and that was the focus of, Flacco and Baker Mayfield. Cam Ward's family was a part of it too, because he's not married either. He does have apparently a girlfriend, but whatever. And Jaden might as well, the USC player. I don't know what that relationship is about. But to me, these quotes are the part that I'm struggling with. Because, hey, man, I know it's easier said than done, but don't let emotions get in the way of business. And they did. It's emotional. It's highly sensitive. It's given by the family, not him. And it gives off, let's face it, it gives off some RG3 and RG3 family vibes. And he's been the antithesis, the opposite of RG3 since he got here. But the mother's been involved. She's an agent for him. I haven't had one issue at this point with anything. I thought it was, on the Netflix show, it's certainly as an observation that she was probably as much a part of his story as he was on the show, but they could have left a lot on the cutting board too. We had the guy on the show that directed that part, and he said there's always a lot left on the cutting board. But Jaden had a tough season, and the team had a tough season, so he wasn't as much of a focus of that show as Baker Mayfield and Joe Flacco were. But I just think that it is a bit of an unforced error, a bit of a self-inflicted mistake to put out a statement to ESPN saying, quote, the Daniels family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected by this. I didn't like reading that part. It just, that one hit me. You guys know how much I love Jaden Daniels. And part of me thinks he's not a part of this at all. I don't know that. He might be hurt, but it could be those around him that are hurt even more. Like, I'd like the focus right now to be on eventually number 5 being retired and hanging from, the new stadium at RFK. Like, I don't think that we're there yet. I think there's a good chance we could get there, but we're not there yet. That should be the focus. He's a professional football player right now. If there is an absolute legal case for them to stop LSU from using his NIL, or they're using it as leverage to get some sort of financial benefit from their continued use of his NIL, go for it. I don't know what the deal says, so I can't speak to that. But the Daniels family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected. Come on, man. This is business, it sounds like. Deal with it as if it's business. Don't let the emotions or the feeling of being disrespected get out there when you're a professional quarterback with a big season that you're on the verge of after a season last year that didn't go well. A lot of expectations from you. Seems just like an unforced error at this point for this to become a story right now. I would certainly say that to anybody handling their PR. The perception, whether real, fair, or not, is for a lot of people around here, it gives off a lot of RG3 vibes and family vibes, and that's not a good vibe. 301-230-0980. Your chance next. Jaden Daniels is suing, or has sent, a cease and desist letter to LSU to tell them to stop using his name, image, and likeness, which apparently was not allowed 180 days after his NIL contract was terminated. And then in a story on ESPN.com, Mark Schlabach got to the bottom of this. The apparent emotional sort of trigger is that they gave his number 5 to a top level cornerback named DJ Pickett to wear this upcoming season, and they apparently promised him that it would be protected. Of course, Brian Kelly protected it last year. There's a new coach, Lane Kiffin, and to nail down this recruit, part of the contract, I guess, was to give him the number 5 jersey. Schlabach had comments from a spokesperson with Daniels, and the quote was, "The Daniels family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected by LSU's decision to give Jaden's number to another player." So I have no idea if they've got a legal claim to stop LSU from using his name, image, and likeness. It would be crazy to me if they do, and that would be on the university for allowing that to happen. But if they do, okay. I mean, I don't have a copy of that contract. I think for me, focusing in on some of the quotes, I would just refer to it as kind of a PR unforced error. Like, I just wouldn't want out there less than a month now until the regular season, or exactly a month away from the regular season beginning, in a very critical professional year for him. I wouldn't want the perception out there that he is overly sensitive and feels deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected by LSU giving his jersey number to a top recruit at LSU. That's just me. It gives off vibes of RG3 and RG3's family, and all that we went through during those years. And I just want him focused on making sure that number 5 in burgundy and gold somewhere down the road is actually not only a protected number, a retired number. You guys say what? 301-230-0980. Robert in Annapolis is first to jump on. Go ahead.
Well, good morning. Well, you covered it pretty well. I think the only concern, if I was a fan, is if it was a distraction to Jaden, as he prepares for this
It may not
season.
be at all, Robert. I mean, he may have very little to do with this. Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't really have anything. He seems to be very passive. Yeah. So I suspect the family, that's probably the mother, I would suspect. But I don't know that. But that would be
that's not a bad guess. She's very involved. She's also, in addition to being his mother, she's his agent.
Yeah, we have it over here with our guy too. We've gone through this, but as long as it doesn't affect his performance, his preparation, and all that, I wouldn't be concerned. I mean, he has a legitimate. I don't know how all this stuff with the college works now, but if he's being used in some way as a promotional situation, he probably should be recompensed for that as well. But perhaps he should release a statement because something should come from him directly.
I wouldn't at this point. We are, they're going to play a preseason game Friday. This is where my suggestion would have been, do what you need to do to express how disappointed you are through your attorney, but don't put statements out there on behalf of the family about how profoundly, how deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected you feel. Jaden's a professional football player. He's 24, 25 years old right now.
Right.
The statements don't need to come from his family. Right? I mean, this isn't youth sports. This isn't mothers and fathers stepping in and telling the coach they're really upset with the kid's playing time. If there's a legal reason for the cease and desist, go for it. That's fine. But no statements about being super sensitive, super disappointed, and feeling super disrespected on the verge of a very critical professional season for this player. That's
Well, I
that's
agree.
kind of the way I
So
feel, and I love him more than anything. And I honestly
I know.
would be very surprised if there's a lot of involvement with him on this. But who knows? We don't know. I
Right.
I doubt it will affect his play. I can't imagine it would. Thanks, Robert. Let's go to Eric in Norfolk or Norfolk.
No, you pronounced it right the first
I
time.
know
That
I
was
do.
perfect.
I know, but not everybody knows what that means. I had
Sure,
relatives
sure,
that lived down
absolutely.
there, so I know how to pronounce it.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I cannot wait for September 13th to hurry up and get here. And
Yeah, right.
Jersey number talk not be a thing,
Yeah.
but to what you were just talking about with Robert is, we'll find out just how much he's involved in this when week 1 comes around and on the first drive and the offense is being announced and he says Jaden Daniels Arizona State as opposed to Jaden Daniels LSU.
Ooh.
To see,
I don't
and
know
that's
if
the
he
thing is
can
then all of a
control
sudden,
that. Can he? Can he tell the networks or his own team to not put LSU in his biography? Look, they're saying don't mention anything, any biographical information. I mean, they essentially, the cease and desist letter is, please don't even mention that he ever played for your school. That's a whole
I'm
other
talking about the
argument,
talking
Eric.
heads at the bottom.
It's a whole other argument. I've been down this road many times. But, the player benefits from the school and college football, and the school and college football team benefits from the player. But if a player doesn't use college football and the platform, the marketing platform that is college football, what's he going to do? Have, Uncle Charlie coach him up in the backyard and then after 3 years when he's eligible be the number 2 pick in the draft? Like, there is tremendous value for very talented players to play college sports. It's a marketing platform that allows them to be drafted high and make millions of dollars before they've even taken a snap in the NFL. Now, they're making millions of dollars in college playing already. But go ahead, Eric. Sorry. Finish.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah. But one of the things I learned early on in my professional career is that more times than not, perception overrides reality. And so whether or not he actually has a case in this, he is getting bad advice and bad counsel, and this perception is not looking good on him. And it's just adding fuel to the fire of those who were trying to compare him to RG3 and saying, see, I told you, look at this. And I don't personally still see that. I think he's still a better person and player than RG3. I just don't like it. It's giving ammunition for those who've tried to compare him in the past.
Thanks, Eric. I mean, that's kind of my thought, is this is one of those unforced errors from a PR standpoint. Is the juice really worth the squeeze to put quotes out like that? And look, let's be fair, too. Yes, for many, it will have RG3 vibes, but RG3 had the owner on his side. He was entitled by the owner. He was basically the guy that could say, yeah, I don't want him as a coach. I don't want him as a teammate, etc. At least that's what the perception was. The parents were in the locker room. The owner's walking right past Kirk Cousins after he throws for 330 against the Browns to get to RG3. We don't have that situation to deal with anymore. There's no, by the way, Jaden seems to me to be the last person that would have taken advantage of that owner situation and entitlement. And we know that RG3 did. Let's go to Ralphie in Rockville. Ralphie, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. So the name, image, and likeness, that's just the cease and desist letter is just a warning. It's not a court order. It's not like he's saying. So
yeah,
so
I know what a cease and desist letter is. Yes.
Right, I'm sure you do, but the fans, I think it's a little bit of an overreaction, and I think that the basis of this is the money situation. It's not that look, Arch Manning got $7 million just to go to Texas last year. These college players are making a lot of money. It's a new precedent that a lot of people don't understand. It's business behind this, and I think I kind of think it's ridiculous. I think that jersey shouldn't be retired. It's just my opinion on it. And this is kind of how I felt about the Stephon Diggs. And, well, okay, let me not even talk about that because people are going to feel disrespected. So I'm not even going to mention that. So, yeah, I just think it's kind of ridiculous. I think Jaden could be a little bit disappointed that a player is wearing his number and he's not even really proven yet. So I think that he feels a little disrespected, but I don't think Jaden is over emotional about it. I think it's more so his team around him.
Right.
And the last thing I want to mention is I think that this RG3 comparison, every time that they see something with Jaden, I think it doesn't make sense because I don't think even his mother, for example, has not went into the locker room and said, "Hey, I want to run this.
I don't.
I want to run that."
You know, I've thought that those comparisons, both the playing style and otherwise, have been ridiculous. I think he's been the opposite, and the situation's been the opposite of what it was in 2012, 2013. I agree with you on that.
But the problem is you have credible people that are saying this. I'm not saying you. I'm saying there's other credible people I see online saying this, and I'm just like, I don't think people understand the gravity of damage of what RG3 fathers did when he was here. He rubbed a lot of players the wrong way, saying he wanted his son to run this, and why is Kirk running this in the Cleveland game? That's just off limits, and I don't think Jaden's mom has ever done that. Jaden's father has ever done that.
Not at all.
I think that distinction needs to be made. So
yeah, I
that's
agree.
All I have to say on
Totally
that.
agree. I've always said and pushed back on any sort. I mean, they're completely different players. First of all, Jaden is a much more polished player as a young player than RG3 ever was, and maybe more so than RG3 ever had the potential to be. He's much more of an introvert than RG3 was. RG3 was a massive extrovert, consumed with self-promotion. Jaden's been the opposite in the NFL. I mean, we could go on and on. And yes, the family comparison as well. I mean, the family and RG3, remember, in many ways, it wasn't their fault. It was the owner's fault for allowing it to happen and entitling him. And let's face it, the owner was strange in that he buddied up with 22-year-olds as a 50-year-old or as a 45-year-old. I mean, the whole thing was just odd. That's not what we have here. I agree. But my point is, it's a bit of an unforced PR error because it's going to lead people to say that felt that way, see, told you. And I also just think, this is just my opinion, the more pressing matter is making your number 5 in burgundy and gold valuable and retirable more than even protectable 10 years from now, 12 years from now. And the perception of this is, and even though I doubt that he's preoccupied with this, that would be my guess, it just leaves it with that perception. You want to fight the NIL thing with LSU with the cease and desist letter, good, and you want to go after him, and you're trying to create leverage to get some money maybe out of him. That's your business, but don't let the emotions, don't let don't let emotions get in the way of business. It happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. Emotions sometimes start businesses. They start wars. But really, it's not a good mix. And I would have suggested to anybody saying ESPN's calling, they want some quotes. Yeah, don't. No. If somebody gets a copy of the cease and desist letter, that's fine. But we're not going. We're not going to tell everybody how upset Jaden is and how disrespected and profoundly and deeply disappointed, the family is. The family, not even him, the family is over his jersey number being given to another player. Even if it was promised to be protected. I just think that they didn't need to go there. Thank you. Let's go to Aveen. Aveen, go ahead.
The decision to take legal action on this and the public statements just totally seem like it's coming from his mom to me. I mean, it totally goes against, what we feel like Jaden's personality is, which is very grounded, very self-aware, not attention-seeking. And his mom, on the other hand, is very public, very sensitive about everything being said and talked about her son. It just seems like it's coming from his mom. And I just think it's a bad look. It's a bad look, nationally for his perception. I mean, it makes him look very sensitive, very lacking self-awareness, and, just kind of like a narcissist. And, to me, it seems like if I was Jaden Daniels and I saw all these people now trashing me for doing this and I had nothing to do with it, I would want to publicly disown it. But he can't do that because his mom is probably the one who did it, and it would be publicly going against your mom. So this is like the first time you kind of feel like there might be an issue with his mom being his agent and mixing, your family with that. So that's just what I feel like. I feel like it's totally not Jaden. Like this is totally against his personality.
Yeah, I think the perception becomes we're getting close to, again, because of our experience, the family being too involved with the starting quarterback who is a professional adult starting quarterback. And by the way, can advocate on his own behalf without the need. Now, again, I can't speak to this cease and desist letter. I don't have the contract that he signed with LSU. I don't know what it allows LSU to do and not do. I think it would be remarkable if a college athletic program like LSU, with a football program that's more than 100 years with the history it has, to give up its rights to market, promote, recruit with the performance of players that came through their program. That seems insane. He benefited from playing there. They benefited from him playing there. And it seems like that mutual relationship should continue. But obviously, they don't feel like it should, or they want to get paid for it. And maybe it feels like the impetus for it was giving away the number 5 jersey. And look, Lane Kiffin, these are sensitive issues within very high profile, programs, professional teams, and professional sports with passionate fan bases. These become big conversations. I don't know how the LSU fan base feels about this story. I'm sure there are some people that are like, you can't give away Jaden's jersey. He's one of the 2 or 3 best players to ever play here. We don't retire jerseys except for Billy Cannon's, but his should be protected. And then others may say, yeah, man, it's just kind of petty. We can't lose this, number 2 in the nation cornerback to another school that'll let him wear number 5. Maybe we should get away from protecting jerseys. All right, stay on hold. I see everybody there. Did you have something else to add, Aveen?
Yeah, Kevin, really fast. Yeah, you might be right about the legal validity of it, but I'll just say, the perception is that he's taking legal action because he's upset that somebody else is getting his number, and he's just retaliating.
Yes, that's right. That's why I would say, is the juice really worth the squeeze? And maybe it is. I can't speak to that, but from a PR standpoint, to put some of those quotes out, that to me was a self-inflicted mistake. Thank you, Aveen. Stay on hold, everybody that's there. We'll take more calls on this next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Mark and Largo. Go ahead.
Man. I'm gonna try to be as polite and nice as possible, but if this isn't pertaining to our current football team, I think it's a nothing burger. Okay, and you have to.
Why did you say
yourself,
you're going to try to be as polite as you can, and then you just called it a nothing burger?
It
Seemed
is
like a
nothing
big
burger.
setup for a dud finish.
No. Oh, it is a big setup for a dud finish because Kevin, you keep talking about RG3. Let's talk about Dwayne Haskins. You remember him?
Yes.
You remember how the media destroyed him?
Soul.
Remember how that kid was tormented and gone before he left, right when he left here. This place destroyed him. What happened on April 22nd, April of 22, just put him out of his misery. We have to be careful how.
Hold on for a second, and I'm going to be respectful here. Is April 22nd? What was the? Is that the draft day or is it?
No, April of 22. April of 22 is when he passed.
April of 20. Oh, when he passed away.
Right, April of 22 when he passed. Here's what I'm trying to say here.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Because
no, you said April 22nd, or April of 22 was the day that did him in. Yes, it did. Unfortunately, very sad.
Yes,
Rest in peace, Dwayne.
Right, and my point about this is this. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say here. You got to remember the source of where this is coming from. ESPN. ESPN has a Super Bowl this year. ESPN is trying to get the Dallas Cowboys in the Super Bowl. You can laugh just like Max laughed. You can laugh when I say they're trying to get Caleb Williams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The only thing they feel like is a serious threat to anybody getting into the Super Bowl is Jaden Daniels. Not the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels.
Mark, I laughed because
they're trying to rattle him right now with a made-up story. Is that what you got for me?
I'm not saying it's a made-up story. It may be something, but who cares?
And who are they doing it to prop up, Mark?
This is my quarterback. If he's not doing something here, I don't care. Guys, look who we have in the White House.
We're off the rails so fast.
But I don't you see? I really wish I could agree with you that this is a nothing burger. And my point to them would have been before they decided to make it more than a nothing burger by talking to ESPN and telling ESPN how deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected the Daniels family feels by LSU giving away the number. I would have said, let's not let this turn into anything. Let's keep it a nothing burger. Let's not say anything. That's what I would have done.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay, and that may be that's fine and well and good. But is this affecting the Washington Commanders, Kevin?
I don't think it is, but not everything that I do on this show or everything that sports fans discuss affects the Washington Commanders.
And again, it's ESPN, who clearly has an agenda here,
which is?
Well, he's already told you what it is. They're getting the Cowboys to the Super Bowl.
They get the Cowboys. And why, Kevin? Because ESPN has the Super Bowl.
They do have the Super Bowl this year. You're correct. And you know what? Let me just tell you something. If Dallas were in that Super Bowl, it'd be the highest-rated Super Bowl of all time. I think you're on to something.
And listen, Bob Iger just bought the Lakers, too. I smell his fingerprints all over this entire thing. It's a conspiracy.
He's Mr. Disney himself. I think you might be onto something. So let's play this out. They got a hold of the cease and desist letter. They called somebody from the family, air quotes, and knew that if they got the family rolling on the phone, that the family would give up a really good quote or two that they could make a big story out of it. And that would then lead to a lot of disruption in Jaden's preparation for the season, meaning the team's going to fall apart and Dallas is going to pass Washington for first place because Philly and the Giants don't even exist. What are they going to do with the Giants and the Eagles to get Dallas into the Super Bowl? And then the Rams. I can't wait to see what's coming with that. What are they going to do with the Rams?
Look, I think it's evidently clear. We know the best quarterback in this division is Jaden Daniels. He may be the best quarterback in the conference.
Right.
He's Matt Stafford, but he is.
All right. So if they don't win the division, they don't have as good of a chance to win the Super Bowl. I got you. All right. I still think there's got to be a big Philadelphia bombshell coming from ESPN, just to make it solid that Dallas wins the division. What do you think that'll be? Who's it going to be about? Is it going to be that video? You know what? The video that came out yesterday with Jalen Hurts throwing the pick to Quinyon Mitchell that generated 15 million views on social media. They're going to get some sort of quote from Jalen Hurts. They're going to blow that thing up, and it's going to turn the Eagles sideways. You're onto it, man. You always are.
Talking about the Cowboys like this. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you always are. You're always ahead of it. I don't know why we don't put Mark and Largo on first.
This is going in the file.
This is a good one.
This is a real good one, though.
Do you have anything else to add to your thesis?
I just want to say one thing to the Commanders Nation, okay?
Yeah.
This is our quarterback. People make mistakes, all right? Things
I don't
happen.
even think he
I don't
made
care
the
how
mistake.
it went about. Focus on the damn season. That's all I care about. That's all we all care about. I'm not going to sit up here and judge him how he is off the field. If the kid can play quarterback and he can win, we can take us to the Super Bowl and win it. I don't give a damn. I don't really care about this stuff right now. That's all I want to say, Commander.
Well, you got pretty wound up. You got pretty wound up over it. You say you don't care about it, but you got pretty wound up with the ESPN conspiracy theory.
I'm tired of people always making some. I mean, I don't hear nothing going on about Joe Burrow. If this was Drake May, nobody would be talking about it. And yes, if you think I'm mentioning something through Morse code, Kevin, pick up on what I'm saying.
Well, let me just tell you, if Joe Burrow sends a cease and desist letter to LSU, and Joe Burrow, and there was somebody about to wear number 9, it would absolutely be a story. Absolutely. So I disagree with you on that front. But it's a great overall theory. You're always all over it, and I always enjoy when you call. Billy, Jason, Anthony, Athen, everybody else on hold, stay there. We'll take a few more calls on this. Andy Poland coming up next hour as well. from Sandy. Sandy writes, why didn't they just send the lawyer letter about the jersey number and be done with it? Question mark. I would imagine that there's legitimately no legal claim to the jersey number. That seems like the right answer. And there is potentially, based on the contract that he had with LSU, the NIL contract, there may be a legal claim to them not being able to use his name, image, and likeness, from after 180 days post the termination of the agreement, as it was spelled out. No player's going to have the ability to stop a university from giving out a number. I can't imagine that was in his NIL deal. How did he know he was going to become the Heisman Trophy winner and the number was going to become sacred? All right, let's go to Billy and Chantilly. Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, good morning. Just to recap, since we brought the diva number 7 into the bloodstream, we've lost our starting tackle. We found out that Terry's mental health was negatively impacted by AP's masterful contract negotiation in 2025. And now our Superman quarterback is in a feud over his college number. Is that a fair recap over the last 4 days here?
Yes, but I guess my question to you would be, and this is the most important thing, are you off of 17-0 because of it?
This year?
Yeah.
They'll be lucky to win 5 games at this rate.
Oh, really? Okay.
This is a disgrace.
Okay. 5 games.
This team is falling apart. It's when you bring guys like Diggs into the bloodstream, into your precious bloodstream, this is what happens. It's just I don't know why. It just
how did Tunsil's injury happen with Diggs in the building?
This is what happens.
Okay, this is so stupid. I don't know why I'm giving it time. Do you have anything somewhat, thoughtful to say on this call?
Hold on. You just gave Mark 10 minutes on ESPN.
He's more entertaining than you are.
The Super Bowl.
He's more entertaining than
That's
you
a legitimate conspiration theory.
And that's a legitimate possibility that this is ESPN just trying to get the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. Okay, Diggs into the bloodstream. Okay, next point. Hello?
You didn't hear what the points were?
I did. I got it. Stephon Diggs is responsible for the last week of an injury, a major injury, and now, wait, what was the other thing?
Kevin.
Terry McLaurin's
his mental health
story with Mike Jones that revealed he's got some anxiety, had major anxiety, was difficult to deal with last year, and now the cease and desist letter and the sensitivity over the number. Okay, what else you got?
As a result of AP's masterful contract negotiation, now we got Superman quarterback worried about his college number.
It's all Diggs' fault.
Me,
okay, do you have another point?
Me. Do not gaslight me. This is a real.
I'm not gaslighting you. I'm acknowledging the point you've made. These things are all because they brought Stephon Diggs onto the roster. That's the point you're making.
You brought the diva into the bloodstream, so
right.
Yes, that's the point.
All right.
Have a great
season. Noted. Let's go to Jason in Laurel. Jason, go ahead.
I don't know how to follow those last 3 calls. But I'll be honest with you, Kev, I'm troubled, and it's all your fault because I didn't even know who this guy was 4.5 years ago. You and Denton talked about him, and I started following him about mid that Heisman Trophy season, and I was so thrilled that we got to draft him, and everything I know about this guy, it's like thumbs up to work ethic, all that. I've actually watched all of his college games backwards because I wasn't watching him in the moment. And the thing that troubles me the most is the last question that you asked the gentleman, hey, is this the business side or is this, and he's like, well, I talked to Jaden. I'll leave it at that. That troubles me.
No, he said he didn't talk to Jaden.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I said,
sorry,
obviously he's not going to Mark Schlabach, who we had on the show, which is who Jason is referring to, and he's not going to reveal who the family spokesperson was. But I just said, does he feel like Jaden is as upset about this as the family? I'm paraphrasing there, and he just said, I'll leave it at this. I did not talk to Jaden for this story.
I'm sorry, I misheard.
It's his family. It's I'm sure it's the mother who's a big part of the dropping of the of the quote from the story. The Daniels family is deeply disappointed and feels profoundly disrespected by LSU's decision to give Jaden's number to another player. Look, it's real simple for me. This is, to me, an unforced PR error. If you want to do the cease and desist letter, if you feel really wronged by them giving out the number 5 number, send the cease and desist letter, but don't give ESPN the quotes that tell everybody that your son or your family member is so hurt and so disrespected as he's gearing up for an NFL season about a jersey number. I just
Kev, I'll leave you with this, man. The two things that are screaming in my head right now, and I that's a perfect take. Unforced error is perfect take, but there's two.
By the way, I don't have a problem with
him
being sensitive to it. If he really is, I don't have an issue with that. I just don't think it makes sense for it to be public. It just gives out the vibes for our fan base that go back and harken back, 14 years. Anyway,
two things that scream in my ears is what Theismann just said to you. Hey, it's the team's number to give away. Clearly, Jaden has maybe some different feelings, and I think that's a little alarming. And two, Terry talking about his disrespect. I don't know what was in Jaden's contract. I don't know. But I don't think this team disrespected Terry. And to hear that part of this, that the family feels so disrespected, I'm like, what, really? But maybe there was something that was said to him. Do you think Klein will ask JD this the next time he takes the podium? Will there be a question about this?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, this is, again, the fact that it's the number one sports trending story overnight and through the morning for a while is precisely why my advice would have been, let this wait for another day. Not now on, a month away from the season beginning. And if you really feel that strongly about it, send the cease and desist letter, but don't let everybody know, that you're so deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected. It just seems to be, it comes off as way too preoccupied with something that has nothing to do with what he should be focused on right now. And by the way, I don't think this is him. I don't think this is him that's profoundly disrespected and deeply disappointed. And I don't think it's going to affect one, iota of the upcoming season. But the perception that's given off isn't great. I mean, people are weighing in on this all over the country if you're following this on social media. Athen in Annapolis, finish it up for us.
This is narcissism on steroids with the fine hand of Miss Regina Jackson at the forefront. And guess what, everybody? This is a prelude, a preview of what the contract negotiations coming up very soon are going to be like. And I also think, Kevin, this is the prime time to have the legend of Uncle Tom Lavero call Miss Regina for an interview again and ask her about all this and ask her if he can tape record it.
They wanted him to cease and desist, but but of course that's pretty hard to do. That was Tommy was the first. It was very interesting. Tommy was the first to mention about Jaden's mom at Arizona State essentially being banned from the school because she got too involved with some of the recruiting, and there were some recruiting violations, et cetera. I think everybody knows that story. Tommy simply put it into a story about Jaden Daniels before he got drafted, and he wasn't even opining on the issue. He just put in what happened at Arizona State, and they went nuts. Their representatives went nuts. It's a long story. I'll let him tell it on an upcoming show. But look, Let me just say that the point that you made about the upcoming contract, because that's going to be a big deal. And let me just say this right now: there's no chance that you can't give him the big deal. He is the guy. Okay, I don't even care what happens this year. In many ways, I've seen enough to know that this guy is elite level. In terms of his talent, and you pay that. Now, if he had some sort of serious injury this year, obviously that changes the calculus. But to your point, it's going to be an interesting contract negotiation when we get there in January, February of 2027. It's hard to predict exactly what it'll be like because we won't have the context to discuss right now off of another entire season. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one. That's for sure. What else you got, Athan?
I would like Tommy to ask her if she'd like some cheese with her wine or maybe a box of tissues for her tears. Because what if Jaden didn't get number 5? Would there be a letter going out to them about that?
Yeah, I mean he paid for it. He paid for it from Tressaway. Number 5's very important to him. Look, a lot of young players, these numbers are very, very important to these players. He did what players do in the league, and that is request it, ask for it, and pay for it. And Tressaway decided to give it to him. Tressaway perhaps could have said no, and LSU could have said no to this kid and lost the kid to another school. They could have done that. And I bet you Brian Kelly would have seriously considered it because he's the one that apparently promised, hey, we're going to protect your number. As long as I'm here, don't worry about it. Lane Kiffin didn't feel the same way. All right, when we come back, Andy Poland's near 50-year radio career might be over. I think most of us that know him don't think it actually is. But he joined me yesterday to kind of regale the audience and you guys next with some stories and memories from his incredible sports radio career, not only in this market, but in others as well. You'll hear that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Andy Pollin helped launch this radio station, the Team 980, all the way back in May of 1992 when it was the Team 570. They moved signals to 980, and Andy did every imaginable show possible on this radio station during his time here, including 13 plus years on what I would consider to be one of the best shows that has ever aired in this market, The Sports Reporters, with his co-host, Steve Zabin. For the last 7 years, Andy's been doing a show on another station in the market. And the other day, HR came in and paid a visit to Andy, and that was it. He's been doing sports radio for almost a half century. His goal was to make it 50 years. He started in 77. He came on my podcast yesterday, and we talked a lot about his career. He shared some of the stories and memories of his career. And I started off by saying, look, I don't think that this is it for you. And that's where it started. Joining me right now is my longtime friend, Andy Pollin. Let me make a proper introduction of Andy. In May of 1992, just a few months after the Redskins won their last Super Bowl, Andy was part of launching the first ever 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week sports talk station in D.C. At the time, it was called the Team 570. Eventually, the signal would move to 980, and it's been there ever since. Andy, for all of us, is the godfather of 980. He launched it. He did every imaginable show that could be done on the station, the most notable being the 13-plus years he spent with Zabe on the Sports Reporters. He taught and mentored so many of us that have been doing it for years. And along the way, Andy was raising 2 great kids. That's turned into 3 grandkids. And as of yesterday, after 7 years of doing a show on 630 WMAL, he, like many in the business, was shown the door. But nicely, I understand, in terms of you being shown the door, because you and I talked yesterday. But I'm going to tell you this. I would wager that you end up somewhere, that you land somewhere. You always do. I don't think you're done yet.
Yeah, I hope not. I mean, I had set a goal to get to 50 years, which would have been the end of 2027. And then when they got Jaden Daniels 2 years ago, I said, well, let's see, and maybe they make the Super Bowl, so I'll do it a week after the Super Bowl in 2028. I didn't quite get there, about a year and a half short. So it is what it is.
50 years. So your first job, it was in Texas, right? Wasn't it in Texas somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, I went to American University.
Yep.
And I know Syracuse is the place, and people like Mike Tirico and Andrew Siciliano and Bob Costas and all the great people that came out of there. But we had a pretty good group of people make it out of that campus radio station and have careers. And someone that you actually worked for, Joe Fowler, was one of my best friends there. And through an odd set of circumstances where he went home to do the Dodgers AA team in San Antonio, he helped me to get this job in Port Arthur, Texas at the start of 1978. So that's when I marked my professional career. My first paid job was January of 1978.
But you went from there to what we both would call the gold standard in sports talk radio, and that would be FAN in New York. You ended up there from Texas, correct?
Well, yeah, I made 2 other stops. I went to San Antonio, where I finished school at Trinity University and worked at WOAI. And then from there, my news director had gone to Dallas at WFAA, and I worked there for 2 years. And that was my first encounter with the HR department as they changed format.
What a business.
Yeah, and so and that was okay because I don't even think I was 24 years old yet, and I'd had 6 years in Texas, and I thought, okay, now's the time to go back home, and I did. I packed up my Toyota and threw out the bed from my apartment and drove home, And one thing led to another, and United Press International had a radio network at the time. It was known as a wire service primarily, but they were making the move from New York to D.C., so actually I did some work in New York, and then when they moved down to D.C., I worked there full-time. And then in 1987, I saw the Washington Post a two-line story that this country music station that carried the Mets was about to become all sports. And I called, we used to have what they called the Blue Book, and it would have the listing of all the media people in the markets, based on teams. So this was the NBA Blue Book, and I looked in the New York Blue Book, and the listing for WHN, the name was Howie Rose. And so I called, he picked up the phone, he knew what I wanted, he blurted out the address and hung up the phone. And I sent a tape, and one thing led to another, and I was part of the original staff there in '87.
That's crazy. Who was on the original staff at FAN? I mean, Francesa and Russo weren't doing the show together.
No.
At that point. Were they both with the station?
Actually, the way this happened was they had built the station around the Mets, and the lead into the Mets was going to be Pete Franklin. Pete Franklin was from New York, but he hadn't been there for years. He was successful in Cleveland, very successful in Cleveland. And they paid him a lot of money, like $300,000 a year, which is an awful lot of money back in 1987. And he immediately had a heart attack. And so he was delayed in getting started. And they had several people fill in the 3 to 7 shift, or the 3 to Mets pregame, which was like at 6:30. And then the morning show host, the original morning show host, was Greg Gumbel. Greg Gumbel, who had been at ESPN, and a wonderful guy and a great TV broadcaster, not cut out for radio at all. And then in the 10 o'clock spot, they had, I believe it was Art Shamsky for a while. And Art Shamsky was a good guy and part of the '69 Miracle Mets. Uh-huh. But once the conversation drifted away from the '69 Mets, he was kind of lost.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So he left. And then, let's see, I guess Jim Lampley had a midday show there, and he was still in New York, but shortly after the launch of the station, ABC fired him, and he went to Los Angeles to do news.
Right.
And, yeah, in those days, you couldn't do, the way they do it now, where you can have a home studio, so you had to go someplace. And after a few months, it just got to be too much. And he was out. So Bill Mazer came in for a while. Spencer Ross did shows. And then they, after a year, they bought the NBC-owned and operated stations. This was Emmis Broadcasting, and it was Jeff Smulyan, who was the owner, who later was in the mix to buy the Nationals before they went to the Learner.
The Indianapolis guy, right?
Yeah, and David Letterman was an investor in his group, and a really good guy and a good group of people. And they looked at sports radio as something that, because they were FM guys, FM music guys.
What were you? Well, let me just stop you. What were you doing at the station during this? Updates?
I was, and that's another thing that tells you about the time. In 1987, there's no internet, right? And so the only way that you can get scores, there's two ways. One is the all news stations, WCBS at that time and WINS, and sports phone, which the gamblers could call.
Right.
And
I'm familiar.
someone would spit out 50 scores or however many they could get in a minute. So they said, well, look, if we want to get the people listening, we got to give them scores. And since the all news stations are doing it every half hour and sports phone costs you 50 cents a call, we'll give it to you every 15 minutes. And so here I was interrupting highly paid talk talent like Jim Lampley and like Greg Gumbel to give the scores of Eastern New Hampshire at 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was like crazy.
Yeah.
And then, as things began to evolve, then they made it the 2020 flashes. And now with, smartphones and everything, they don't even do updates anymore.
Right.
The whole foundation of the station was updates. They don't do them anymore at all.
Right. So Mike and the Mad Dog, how did they come together? You've told me this story before, but I want everybody else to hear it.
Well, there was another talk station in New York that was, I think it was WMCA, that was put together by a guy who'd been very successful at ABC, and he hired, and this was an unbelievable hire because he was young and he has sort of a speech impediment, but he hired Chris Russo to be on this station. And not many people who were listening, but a guy by the name of Bob Raceman, who I think is still a media critic at the New York Daily News, said, this guy is got something here, and he nicknamed him Mad Dog. And so he got released when the station either changed format or got rid of the staff, and he came aboard part-time at first. And Francesa, who has quite an ego, and he had been working as a researcher for Brent Musburger at CBS. And now this is pre-internet, so he knows a lot of things. He's able to pick up the phone and call Jimmy Johnson at the University of Miami and find out about, the depths on his offensive line. And so he's got access to a lot more information than most people have at that time. And he thought that he should be the afternoon drive guy. And they said, no, we've got people to do that. And he wound up working with a guy named Ed Coleman doing a weekend show. And from there, he started to get more traction, and people were very impressed with his knowledge. But I'll tell you the peanut butter and chocolate moment for Mike and the Mad Dog. This is after they had already flopped over from 1050, which was the original signal, over to 660, which was WNBC. And Imus conveyed, because Imus was making $1 million a year, and you had to either pay him to go away or use him. And since Greg Gumbel wasn't getting any ratings in the morning, they put him on. And Imus was on vacation. And this was the last healthy year that Don Mattingly had. And Russo had become a San Francisco Giants fan.
Right.
Because his father had a traveling business, and somehow or another they were in the same hotel as the Giants, and he got to meet Willie McCovey and Mays and people like that. So he's a lifelong Giants fan. And so he's on the air filling in for Imus, and he's gone on and on and on about how Will Clark is a better first baseman than Don Mattingly. Francesa is driving in because at this point he's co-hosting the midday show, and he's listening to this, and he simply walks into the studio, sits down, and they go back and forth. And that was the birth of what became Mike and the Mad Dog, and the program director who heard it said, we got something here. When Pete Franklin's 2-year contract expired, he put them together, and the rest is history.
That's really amazing. I mean, because for those, that have just listened to DC Sports Talk and aren't familiar with Mike and the Mad Dog, I would imagine they know who most of you know who Mike Francesa is, and even Chris Russo, who has his own Sirius XM channel and has for now probably 10, 15 years, something like that. But as a sports talk listener, before I ever became a sports talk host, I just consumed so much of it, and I spent a lot of time in New York, and I became addicted to Mike and the Mad Dog. They were on, by the way, Andy, as you know, from 1 o'clock to 7 p.m. They did 6 hours every day together.
Well, they usually, since they had so much play-by-play.
Yeah, they would get out at 6:30 or whatever. Right. Let me net it out. Mike and the Mad Dog, you would agree, the gold standard in sports talk radio. That show.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It was addictive. They were so good together, and they didn't get along. Right. It was not a relationship in which they got along very well.
There were times when they actually would not speak a word to each other off the air. It got that bad, and one of them had to do with, and this is the Francesa ego. They were going to fly to Indianapolis to do their show from a Pacers-Knicks playoff game. And I don't know, something happened with their flight. It got canceled, and they got rebooked on another flight. And Francesa couldn't get a first-class seat, and he went home. And Russo, who's not cut from that cloth, was really angry, and that led to a long-time feud. But that was part of what made them great. Really, is that they could put that aside and be professional on the air. It was really amazing.
Let's get to 980. Tell us how it all came about.
Okay, so anyway, I really did not survive the merger of 660 or they flipped from 1050 to 660. I remained part-time. I was doing weekends there, and I had another job at UPI to making ends meet. And one day, I get a call from the guy who had to do the dirty deed of firing me. That was, by the way, my second encounter with HR.
Mm-hmm.
And he oh, I'm sorry, yeah, second encounter. So he was telling me about this station that he couldn't tell me about. He said, there's a station in the Northeast that I'm interested in you for, but I can't tell you where it is. And I'm thinking, okay, it's probably better than what I've got right now because I'm, stringing two jobs together to try to make ends meet. I got two kids and the whole thing. So, I don't think too much of it. One night I get a call from my mother, and she says, they just announced that there's going to be a new sports talk station here, and they got the Redskins rights. I said, really? You're kidding me. And that's what it was. That's what he was preparing to put together. And so he wound up hiring me. And as I said to him, I said, it's a good thing when you fired me, I didn't tell you to F off. And he said, yeah, that would have been okay too. So we got here, and we were operating out of the Rails Brothers offices.
Yeah, Mitch and Stephen Rails purchased that station 570, and Mitch Rails is in the second largest shareholder of our football team. They basically were the ones that bought the station and launched Sports Talk Radio in D.C.
Yeah, they were not radio people.
Right.
They had owned both WGMS, AM, and FM. They were simulcasting on the AM, and nobody was listening on the AM. And they looked at the success of WFAN, and they said, we want to do that. And they bought 16 stations over the course of like 4 years and tripled their money when they cashed out. They knew how to get in and how to get out. And so they hired good people. They built beautiful studios right across from White Flint Mall. And, we launched with, top people. We had a show with Tony Kornheiser. We had a show with James Brown. Initially they had a show with Paul Harris. That didn't work out. They had Bruce Murray and Bob Berger for about a year, and then the Imus show became syndicated.
Right.
So we carried that, and we did all kinds of crazy things.
What was your role right from the beginning? So the Rails brothers, they like you, and they hire you to be the actual program director, correct?
No, I wasn't the program director. I was the sports director, and
Okay.
I consulted with somebody who was the program director, who hired the talent, and handled that kind of stuff. And I was the one who, basically set up the newsroom, hired the people to anchor the reports, including some really successful people like Pam Ward.
Yep.
Earl Forsy's had a long run here. I hired him, and I handled that. And then I was, I could do a bunch of different things. I'd done sidekick stuff in New York, so when Tony said I need a sidekick, I was fortunate to do that. And as I've told this story many times, he first met me and he said, are you going to be funny? And I said, well, I'm certainly going to try. He said, well, it doesn't matter because Lupica says this is going to hurt the column and I'm only going to do this for 2 weeks. So that was our initial encounter. And and then it was, it was 570, and we didn't have much of a signal. We didn't have any ratings. We went through the same thing that WFAN went through in the early days. They're spending too much money. Is it going to survive? Is it not going to survive? And we fortunately had a very good sales manager slash, eventually became GM, Bob Snyder, who had some creative ideas and saved the place. And it was great.
I remember being so excited that we were going to get a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week sports talk station in D.C. because I was very familiar with it. As you know, I wasn't working in the business. I was in a completely different profession, and I was traveling a lot, and I spent a lot of time in New York where I, fell in love with Mike and the Mad Dog and WFAN. I was in Boston. I was in Philly. I was in Chicago. San Francisco and L.A. Had sports talk radio. In fact, I think D.C. may have been, out of the top 10 markets, D.C. may have been the last one to launch 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week sports talk radio.
You got to remember this. There's no baseball here until 2005.
I know.
So, and at the Fan, and this, I think, it makes New York stand out from the other markets, baseball is number one. You can talk about the Yankees 365 days a year. It's just different. So
that was
not
a
having
challenge
baseball,
here, right?
Yeah.
When it started,
Yeah.
is that there was no baseball. And you've told me this story before, but didn't either Francesa or Russo say to you, how are you going to do it in D.C. with no baseball?
No, we were already well into this. So this was at a Super Bowl, and this was maybe even 10 years into the station. He says, I don't know how you do it. What do you do in the summer without a baseball team? Go, we talk about the Redskins.
We talk about the
Really?
Redskins. Yeah.
Yeah, because he was used to the two baseball teams,
Sure.
plus his own team, the Giants, and in New York, you got two of everything.
Right.
So it's a lot different than it is here.
So the early days, and I remember very much as a listener, there were so many lineup changes. And the truth was, Andy, and I think you'd agree with this, some of the shows were really rough. And, it was hard to, find the eventual, mix that was going to work. But was there a moment where you knew early on in those first few years, you know what, this is going to work in this market?
I think this was again a really smart move by Bob Snyder. He's listening. Now Tony's show was 10 to 12.
Right.
Okay. And he would listen to it, and like I think almost everybody said, that's the best show on the station.
Right.
And he had this idea that was kind of related to the David Letterman show, which was a show that was filmed at like 5 o'clock at night, but run even after the Tonight Show, so close to midnight. And he said, what if we do the show like it's done at that time period, but with the mindset of its afternoon drive? And he said, what we'll do is we'll make it 3 hours, so he paid Tony some more money, and then we'll just simply rerun the show in the afternoon, and we'll put in new updates. And that really worked, because now we had the best talent doing the show in the drive time spot. And so I would do the updates, and then they'd be taken out, and Earl Forsey or somebody like that would do the afternoon updates. And on rare occasions, like I remember Jim Lynam got fired at 1 o'clock or 1:30, so I had to do a new show in the afternoon. But it didn't happen very often, and it was, and people would, and some people would even say, yeah, I would like, because Tony was selling like auction items, the charity auction, come in and sit in on the show. And somebody say, yes, the afternoon doesn't work. No, the morning doesn't work for me. I'd like to sit in on the afternoon show.
Yeah.
Actually, it's just watching two reels spin around.
Yeah. All right. Well, forever you've said, I'm going to write a book. So give me some of the chapters in the book.
Well, I actually wrote a book of lists with Len Shapiro.
I remember. Yeah, right.
Yes,
But I'm talking about you've always said there's a book about 980 at some point.
Yeah, all the characters that came in and out of there. I don't know how the whole book writing business has changed too. But what I will probably eventually do is put out a really long Facebook post on this at some point. But it's a business that has changed dramatically. It's not anything like what it was when I got in, and then even when did you start it?
It's 22 years now, if you can believe it.
Okay, yeah. So it was different then, and certain things that we did, like I think what we did on Monday mornings was the gold standard for Redskin follow-up shows. I think that was great stuff that we did. And I don't think that the economics could dictate that now. The crazy stuff we did with Tony with repeating the show, that was something. And then the show that Zabe and I did with a rotating third person. You think they pay that kind of money now to have a show like that?
Right.
That's so a lot of what I did, and the last 7 years at 6:30. I did a show by myself, including running my own board.
Yeah, yeah. When they come to me and ask me to run the board, that's when it's over. But the show you did with Zabe, and you know this, and I've told you this before, and I've told Zabe this before. I think it's the best show that's ever been on in this market. And I for afternoon drive, it was must listen to for 13 plus years. I'm assuming that you would say that was the best thing and the most special thing you were ever a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I look. I had some great opportunities, including the shows that we did on Monday morning.
Right.
I always look forward to that.
Me
because
too.
You and I both had a lot to say about the games, and I'll never forget the day that there was the 7-6 Cowboy win, and you were insisting how physical the Redskins were, and I kept pointing out that they scored only six.
Yes,
They scored only 6
Your
points.
thing was always
that
about how many points. You got to score 21 points to win in the NFL. And I'm like, well, sometimes you can't, and you can still win. Yes, you had a lot
They
of.
didn't.
You didn't like the my analysis that morning. True.
No, yeah, and that's what made that that thing happen. And then we'd have probably Jake would come on, and Doc would come on. We'd get calls. I mean, that's what you really want. You want that kind of follow up after a game, and that sadly doesn't exist.
I love doing that show. That was so much fun.
And Tony was nice enough to call me today, and I told him, I said, we were doing the local show, and the ABC radio, which is what ran at ESPN at that time, they recognized his talent. They hired him to go to ESPN, and he took me with him.
Yeah.
And that led me to do weekends with Mel Kiper. And between that and continuing to do the show with Zabe, I was able to put 2 kids through out-of-state colleges. And none of that would have happened without that. So, people would give you put out something on Facebook, and I got a lot of sad faces and stuff like that. I said, no, this is the business. This is the way this works. And I milked it for a long time, and if there's more, that's great. But nobody should have as much fun as you and I have had doing this kind of work.
Do you have a specific show that's more memorable than any other, or maybe it's a couple of them?
Yeah, I mean, we had various things. One time they had set up. I think we were, there were 2 different runs where we had the Redskin game, so it might have been the second go round when we had them.
Right.
And they had set up some guy from the team to come on and talk about these solar panels that they were putting over the parking lot, a certain part of the parking lot, that they were going to get solar energy out of that, which is, a 3-minute conversation. Oh, you got solar panels. Hey, how about that? So as we're talking to him, we find out he's responsible for more. And this is when I think there may still have been blackouts in the NFL. And to avoid those, Snyder kept covering up more and more seats, and turning them into discos or whatever he was doing. And the guy, and we asked him about some of the seats, and the guy goes, "Oh, we couldn't sell those anyway." And that was when they were still claiming the 200,000 seat waiting list.
Yeah.
And so we went, whoa, wait a minute. That was that. That was one. But nothing tops the Spurrier shows. The Spurrier shows were the best.
Hello, Steve and Andy. They were the best.
And so one time he's on, and this is when it was the second year, I guess, and they had, I guess it was a former quarterback. It wasn't a former Gator, but it was a backup quarterback that Snyder had signed. He cut Werfel in the preseason. Remember, he had the right to do that as the GM. And so the starting quarterback, the guy from Tulane, remember that year?
Ramsey, Patrick Ramsey.
Patrick Ramsey. So he was getting the crap beat out of him because Spurrier was running 4 wide on every play. And Zabe said, well, I think it was Johnson, Doug Johnson or something like that. How well does he know the offense?
Rob Johnson.
Yeah. Because we knew he was eventually going to have to play. And Spurrier goes, Rob Johnson, I don't think he knows which way to turn his head.
Yeah. So good.
And so he, and then I think he was cut the next week, and that's when they brought in Tim Hasselbeck. That was the next move. And then I think it was the last show that we did, and he said that he had intended to come back. This is before he had the 5-11, not too good, press conference, and then resigned from the golf course. So this was going into the last game of the season. I think they played Philadelphia in a Saturday night game. But he said he intended to come back, no matter what happened in that game. And I said, well, since you are coming back and it's at most going to be a 6-win season, do you have anything to give to the fan base for providing optimism for next year? And he goes, No, I can't say that I really do. Nope, I don't. Sid might be able to say something, get the fans all fired up, but no, I don't really have anything on that.
The best. He was the best. When's your next gig start?
I'm open. You told me that some of this is going to run on 980.
Yes,
so,
I'm going to run it on the radio show too.
I would just like to say that when I signed off yesterday from my own show, I said, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9, which proved to be a lie. But if this is running on 980, I believe it is my first time back on 980 since I was Felix Ungern the day before the first Trump inauguration, which would have been January of 2017. So if these are the last words that I ever speak on radio, I'm doing it on a station that is near and dear to my heart and helped to get off the ground over 34 years ago, and it's been a pleasure.
It was Andy Poland with me yesterday. Keep you posted on all that, and Andy will be available to come on occasionally during the football season for sure. There's been another part of the story added to the JD5 LSU cease and desist. I'll tell you what that news is when we come back after this. The conversation about training camp, about football, about Jaden Daniels today, and there's a bunch of it, is brought to you by Xfinity. Don't forget, with Xfinity, you can score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity. Imagine that. So this guy that covers LSU sports, has a podcast, writes about LSU football, Matt Moscana. He just tweeted out. He's with Baton Rouge 104.5 ESPN radio. The LSU Jaden Daniels saga takes another strange turn. Sources confirm Daniels' camp wants LSU to return its copy of the Heisman Trophy, something LSU has no intention of doing. Daniels contacted LSU leadership before fall camp. Lane Kiffin has personally spoken to Daniels. What is a cop? So there's just like a copy of the Heisman Trophy, like a mock? Because I'm assuming he has the actual Heisman Trophy.
Yes. I believe he showed it on quarterbacks. I think.
Why? So the copy, he wants the copy of the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, he doesn't want
the
them
mock-up of the Heisman Trophy.
I think he doesn't, or his camp or him or whoever doesn't want LSU being able to flex. Oh, we bring all these, we have all these Heisman winners. Look at Jaden Daniels, and you can't look at Jaden Daniels anymore. That's what I think the goal that is trying to be accomplished here is.
Yeah, man, that relationship has really turned here in the last 24 hours, and maybe it's been turning here over the last few weeks and or few months. But there was, the thing that I still don't understand is how a college football player signs an NIL deal, gets paid, and then when that player is gone, the school can no longer use anything he did at the school for promotional purposes, for recruiting purposes. Giving up those rights seems insane to me. Yes, it's name, image, and likeness, but it happened at LSU. It's a part of LSU as well. That part, we've gone down this path before. The value equation for college athletes, football and basketball players in particular, the people that said they got no value back for their contribution were wrong. I'm not saying it was a justifiable structure and equitable, and certainly now with unrestricted free agency essentially on a biannual basis, all of these NIL contracts, the big money, the ability to basically say after a year, even if you don't play and get paid $2 million, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else. Now there are contracts, more of them coming into this situation, but there is a mutually beneficial relationship. All due respect to, Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. How were they going to get to the NFL as the number 1 and number 2 picks in the NFL draft without playing college football? Were they going to just get coached up in the backyard for 3 years and then become eligible and then just walk into the draft and be picked number 2 overall? No, playing in the Southeastern Conference, getting coaching, healthcare, meals, training, everything for free, and then a marketing platform that establishes a brand around the best players that they then take to the next level is beneficial. You cannot convince me otherwise. I can't quantify what that marketing and PR benefit is to a player using college sports as the vehicle to get to a professional career, but it is very beneficial. If Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels don't play at LSU, don't play college football somewhere, we don't know who they are when they enter the draft 3 years after their senior year in high school. They need college football and the marketing platform that LSU and Alabama and the SEC and the Big Ten provide them just as much as those places need those guys to play really good football. All right, crazy day. Chris Russell's next, back tomorrow to preview the first preseason game for Washington. They've got the Dolphins in town tomorrow night.